He's literally
Yeah.
justifying stalking her. Like, this is setting up a dark romance completely. He's like, the monster within me wants to be here, but I can't, like, give in, but I can indulge this much, and I'm not really a bad person. Like, that's literally what any sort of stalker romance, it's like, I'm doing, if it's not me, it's gonna be someone else worse.
He already loves her, which is a little bit problematic given that they've never really had a conversation and he can't hear her thoughts. But he's already like so deep into this thing that he already loves her. And I wonder too, like, does Alice's visions kind of help pull that along?
Oh, for
And
sure.
That's the thing is, like, they're super wealthy because of Alice.
Because of that. Well, yeah, because of Alice. And you get in this book a lot more detail. Like, they actually, like, commit a lot of fraud and a lot of, like, crimes to get wealthy. And so there's that, like, morally gray, right? Like, we love the Cullen.
That's the thing, is this book, there's so much more depth to it, and is it necessary? I think we get to a certain point where we realize that, like, he's checking our pulse, and he's probably going to keep doing that. Like, we get it. Do you think it's unnecessarily long?
Yes. I think some parts, I think, are very unnecessarily long.
Welcome, Night Owls, to the Book Club After Dark podcast, an inviting moonlit podcast. I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm Michelle. We break down fantasy, romantasy, and thriller novels.
All things enchanting, intriguing, suspenseful, and maybe a little spicy.
Each episode features intimate discussions on captivating stories, character breakdowns, fan theories, and more. And this is your content warning. This podcast contains mature themes and discussions that may not be suitable for all audiences. Episodes include explicit language, as well as depictions of violence and other intense subject matter. This podcast is rated R for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
And going forward from here, of course, there will be lots of spoilers for Twilight series as a whole as we wrap up and conclude our final episode of Twilight.
Yay. Let's get cozy because the best stories are told after dark.
All right. Tonight's drink of the episode is our final drink of the episode with cocktails and screams. This drink, when you order it at their bar, is actually called the name we're going to use because it works really well for what we're covering tonight with Midnight Sun. So it's titled Mistress of the Dark, and what this contains here is their own house-made sangria, and also it has rum, dry ice, a couple different elements here that all kind of tie it together. And at the end of it is like this name, Mistress of the Dark. It has this pomegranate color to it because it's a pomegranate-based sangria. And of course, we have a pomegranate on the cover of Midnight Sun. So therefore, we thought this fit really well. But also the title, Mistress of the Dark, I thought it kind of fit well with how Edward constantly is talking about how he's going to go to hell for what's going on with Bella. And I just felt like that played in really well. And pomegranate, of course, tied in great. It's a tall drink, and it was really fun watching them make this. And yeah, again, because we had cocktails and screams covering all of our drinks for Twilight, I thought that was just a really, really awesome thing that we got to do with them. And we really thank them so much for participating with that with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cocktails and Screams. This drink is, again, stunning, like the other drinks have been. With the dry ice edition, it adds like this smoky little flair to it. And it has this deep red color, kind of similar to, blood, and just kind of goes into all of the vampire Twilight-y themes. So, again, perfect addition.
It is. And now we're going to immerse ourselves back into Forks, Washington for the last time. This episode, we are exploring Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. So whether you're reading along with us or just here for the book talk, we are glad you're here. I will remind us again that we are not doing our typical deep dive for this coverage of Twilight. We have a little bit different of a setup for this time around. We have our drink of the episode, which we just went over. We're going to do a whole book summary, some plot perspectives in there, but we're going to focus pretty heavily this time on some pop culture and facts, and then we'll close with our mystery Q&A.
Yeah. So let's get into the summary. So Midnight Sun is pretty unique because it's the retelling of her 2005 Twilight novel. This is the first novel in the series, and it's retelling from Edward's perspective instead of Bella's perspective. So if you have this book physically, this is a chunky book. And a lot of it is a lot of the same scenes. There's a lot of different scenes here, but most of it is the same scenes, but you get a lot more of Edward's interior monologue as well as like Edward's perception, because he can mind read those around him. So you get a lot more character development on the characters around him as well. This book starts off not when Bella moves to Forks,
Right.
but when Edward first sees her as they're walking into biology. So this is where we first get his perspective. And he is very intrigued by her, but also very alarmed by her because of her smell. And he literally has to cover his mouth the whole time. And he ends up leaving because his instincts are like, I need to kill her. And he literally goes through like this whole plan in his head, like, I'm going to kill her. I can kill her now, and I can be quick enough, and the other people in this
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to
biology
kill
lab won't
everyone in this
even.
room. Yeah, like I'll have to kill
Right.
everyone in
And
here. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna kill all these kids and the teacher. Like, I guess I could do it. Like, I was like, what? The what?
yeah, it gets really dark really quickly, and you see his
Mm-hmm.
internal struggle from the beginning. It wasn't infatuation at first, it was, I want to kill her. And so
Yeah.
it was interesting seeing that perspective from him. And instead of obviously killing her, because we have a whole saga, he doesn't do that. He leaves Forks. He, gets some fresh air. He does intend to leave permanently, but he ends up not doing that because he's pulled back to Forks. So he's obviously tormented by like this dilemma of being around her. He desires her blood constantly, her smell. She has a floral aroma to her and is drawn to her kindness and how she's like a generally good person. And it bugs him he can't read her mind, but he sees how she interacts with the people in her class and realizes that she is very self-sacrificing. She's inherently good. She will stick up for people around her. And like the only time she really shows her true smile is when she's trying to protect someone. So he's just become so drawn to her. And the fact that he can't read her mind, like that drives him nuts the entire time.
Yes.
And so as the relationship really develops slowly, we have that struggle with self-control, guilt, fear for Bella's safety, fear for his family's safety also, because if he screws this up, it screws up his entire family. Rosalie's constantly like over his shoulder, like, don't mess this up for me. And, there's just a dangerous world he wants to protect her from. But
Right.
there's also other threats, which we know from reading Twilight. We have James and Laurent. They come into play, and this is where, like, at the end of the book, James tracks Bella, but we get Edward's perspective on that, and there's a lot more details that we don't get because Bella goes off and does her own thing and tries to confront James by herself. So you see Edward's perspective on the whole James tracking and, her whole being bit and all that blood, and them actually setting up like her falling through at a hotel, so you get a lot more information on that. And then it wraps up again with prom, just like Twilight does, but from Edward's perspective. All right, next we have key plot points of Midnight Sun. And first, let's talk about how big this book is. And a lot of it is Edward, as he's going through, he's not just giving his own perspective, which is very broody. He is like so in his head. He refers to himself constantly as the monster. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's just
He
like
really
the
does.
monster wants this, the monster wants that. It's like, okay, we're just referring to ourselves in third person as the monster. Cool. He also
Like a lot.
is giving details on literally everyone's mind around him. So you get details
Mm-hmm.
on all of Bella's friends, what they think, because he can't read Bella's mind. So he reads like all the minds of everyone else. You get a lot of details on Alyssa's, like how her visions work, because he's like reading her mind, and like he reads her mind as the visions flip through. And you don't realize, like from Bella's perspective, that the visions are literally, there's multiple going on at a time. I would get a massive headache. I don't know how he does that. And so that adds a lot of context, or a lot of text to this book, is because you have not only Edward's perspective, but you're literally giving everyone else's perspective in this entire book. So there's a lot more character detail going in there. So one of the key things or the key plot points in this book is the van scene, right? That was a huge point in the movies. That was a huge point in Twilight. So this is where Edward stops the van from crushing Bella, and you get from his perspective. And he really doesn't realize what's going on until he reads Alice's mind on what is about to happen. And he quickly sees in Alice's mind that Tyler
Yep.
took a wrong turn or took a turn too quickly and what's about to happen. And that's why he went into motion. It's not that he saw Tyler's van first. It's literally he saw Alice's perception of what is going to happen and change that. So that was interesting. I actually kind of liked that. You get a lot more detail on Alice, which she's such a big...
I like that you get... I think it's interesting because it's from Edward's point of view, but like your point is it's really so many more points of view than just one person. And so while the book is extra thick, you are getting so much more about these characters as a whole because Edward's getting all of that. And you really get to see what his gift is and in its full understanding of that. I have some issues that I took with this book, but we'll start with the positives. So that was definitely one of the positive elements for me was I really enjoyed this perspective and enjoyed reading it from the angle of Edward's perspective in terms of getting the story across. I almost preferred it. I understand why Twilight and almost all fantasy in general starts off with the mortal person who's coming in, and because you're them essentially, you're not in the magical world. So they usually start these books with the more mortal person who is coming in, and you're setting the story up, and you need Bella to come in as the school student because everyone can mostly relate to her, and then you bring in these other characters. But I thought Midnight Sun was great in the sense that, yes, it's from Edward's point of view, but not really, because you can mind read. That's a whole different level of understanding of other people. And yeah, you definitely get a huge level of depth for everybody from this versus just Bella's perspective.
Right, because Bella only sees what people present on the outside, and people internally are very different than what they present, especially when you're in high school. Like, her friends, like Mike is actually like a really, like, would you know, he's kind of really vain and self-absorbed and kind of a douche. And then you see Jessica, like kind of think Jessica is Bella's friend from Bella's perspective. Like for the majority of Twilight, you kind of know in the second book that she's not really as close of a friend, but really you see that Jessica was never really Bella's friend. Like she was always jealous of her. She was always talking trash about her. Why is Mike always talking to her? And I'm like, that's horrible. So you see like more of these characters and who they actually are.
And even when she's gonna start to date Edward, she's just like so nosy, and she doesn't really care about Bella. She just wants to know about Edward. She doesn't really, there's very little care for her in that regard. That's for sure.
Right. And then after the van scene, Edward and Bella, their relationship kind of grows, right? Because Edward ultimately asks Bella to kind of keep this secret, and he doesn't tell her the full secret, but she knows something's up. And he watches her sleep every night, and the monologue he has with himself about watching her sleep, because it's not like he just popped into her room one day. He like at first like was like in the woods, technically off property, and then he slowly gets closer and closer.
Yeah.
And then he like justifies in his head that he was literally sitting in her rocking chair, like in her room, justifying him being there. And this is like, I was texting him like, this is like a dark romance. He's literally justifying stalking her. Like this is setting up a dark romance completely. He's like, the monster within me wants to be here, but I can't like give in, but I can indulge this much, and I'm not really a bad person. Like that's literally what any sort of stalker romance. It's like if it's not me, it's gonna be someone else worse. And if I'm here, at least I'm protecting her for someone worse. Every single stalker romance is like that. So yeah, this is very much setting up. I know it's YA.
That brings me. Yeah, but that brings me to my question about that, where I think you're trying to go here, which is the book dedication. And at the very start of this book, Stephanie Meyer says, this book is dedicated to all the readers who have been such a happy part of my life for the last 15 years. When we first met, many of you were young teenagers with bright, beautiful eyes full of dreams of the future. I hope that in the years that have passed, you've all found your dreams and that the reality of them was even better than you had hoped. So that dedication, while this book is YA, I don't know if it's necessarily classified YA correctly, because I feel like there is this level of dedication to fans who are all adults now. And this reads like an adult book to me.
Yep.
It didn't read like YA to me. Is it super graphic? No, it's not. Not at all. But is it a lot more graphic than Twilight? Yes, hands
Right.
down. And the themes behind it are a lot more dark than what, I wouldn't say sinister or anything like that, but they're definitely like giving dark romance vibes, stalker habits. He legit wants to like kill her and everyone around her in the first couple chapters. I mean, it's like
yeah.
I just don't know that technically qualifies for me as a true YA.
Right. I know. I'd have to agree because he's 104, right? And we've discussed like a lot of his personality is telling that he's like mentally froze at 17, or at least like maturity wise frozen at 17. But he still has X amount of years of experience that gives him more maturity in a way. And he just very much is a monster. So like describing her pulse quickening and like her heart beating, it's not in an innocent way and how it's being described. And you see like it's not, he even mentions that it's physical, but he's also a man. So he's also like sexually attracted to her.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
he keeps saying no mistakes. Like he said over and over again, like dozens of times, no mistakes, no mistakes, no mistakes, Edward. Like meaning like you can't touch her, you're killer. You can't touch, like you can't like just, yeah, you
can't indulge in her
issues
at all.
Yeah.
And it's not just like it's not innocent. Honestly, when you hit it from from his perspective, it's not as innocent as Bella, who's very much like, at least initially, is like,
naive.
Oh, I think he's cute and I'm naive and, he's attractive and I'm just so attracted to him and there's just like this mystery to him. This is very much like, I know I'm a monster and I know you're not. And I really just want to just devour you. Like, I believe Mike said in like the first Twilight, something like he looks like he wants to eat you. And that's literally what he wants to do. And like when you're reading that from Bella's perspective, you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. But when you're reading it from Edward's perspective, it's like, yeah, he actually does. And it's like pretty graphic what's going on up here. Oh.
Yes. That said, and I think we might talk about that more when we get to the end of like where we're at. But I think there were some pros that I enjoyed of like the Port Angeles rescue, of where he hears the thoughts of these guys, and then the other element of him being able to describe how he was feeling in the car because she's like, why does he's so worked up that he needs me to say something else, like to distract him. Like you don't really get that full picture until you hear Edward's side of that. And while yes, it's very, very in depth, it does add a lot of depth to his character. There's no denying that this book by far really gives you a true understanding of Edward. And he, before they even start like talking, before Port Angeles, like he already loves her, which is a little bit problematic given that they've never really had a conversation and he can't hear her thoughts. But he's already like so deep into this thing that he already loves her. And I wonder too, like, does Alice's visions kind of help pull that along as well? Like him being able to see all of that and know that there's this possibility there and know that she is different. And like he has information that one typically should not have when going down a path of a relationship. And that's just the facts. Like he can hear other people. He's immortal. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of benefits that Edward has, like going into this relationship that Bella definitely just doesn't have.
Right. To your point with Alice, because he didn't really struggle, or like he didn't really know what this feeling was. He's like, I know I need to leave, but I want to come back. Like I have to stay here.
Yeah.
And Alice tells him, like, you love her. And we see more of the family dynamic, right? and how Alice has the visions, and she kind of helps guide him because she, based on like the actions he's making, she can see what the future is going to be, whether she's going to turn, whether she's going to stay human, whether she's going to die. So she kind of helps keep him in check in a way. But you also see Alice falling in love with Bella too, because Alice is like, I get a best friend. Please, can I talk to her? Like, she's always like, can I talk to her now? Can I please talk to her? Can we be friends yet? And she's just really eager to have Bella as a friend.
Have a good friendship.
Right. And I thought it was really cute because, Alice is supposed to be like more cutesy, right? And you just see
sweet.
more of that with her because she's more herself when she's around just her family. So I liked that aspect.
Yeah, and she kind of gets like not accepted by the high schoolers or any other friends. She can't get close to them anyway, but even if she did, they're not interested in her because Alice is like kind of weird. She just literally like zones out and like has these visions and stuff, it's just like strange behavior.
Speaking of, so the visions. So we have visions, mind reading. We have a lot of different powers that we've seen. What is one of the powers that if you were a vampire, would you want any of these powers that we've seen throughout this entire
saga? If I was a vampire, I don't know. I think the mind thing comes in handy a lot, but it would also be very annoying. I don't know that I would want to know everybody's thoughts. I just don't think I would enjoy having to have to tune them out, to learn how to tune them out and all of that. No. I don't know. I Jasper doesn't have it well. Like,
he can control
Bella's
emotions.
shield is probably cool, I guess. I like that she has this shield. I guess that's good. I don't know. Okay. Not really. There's nobody that like stands out to me that I was like, oh, cool. I definitely wish I could do that. I mean, they're all pretty cool, but I just don't know that I desire any of them. The shield is probably the best one for me.
Honestly, I wouldn't just mind, like, I couldn't do the mind reading. There's too many thoughts going on. And honestly, I don't care to know everyone's thoughts because most people are weird. I'm not saying I'm not weird, but I don't need to know everyone else's weirdness. And the seeing in the future would be beneficial because, like, to an extent, like, that would be too obsessive and it just kind of happens. But, like, investing in the stock market, that would be very beneficial to know what the lottery numbers are.
Well, that's the thing is, like, they're super wealthy because of Alice.
Because of that. Well, yeah, because of Alice. And you get in this book a lot more detail. Like, they actually, like, commit a lot of fraud and a lot of, like, crimes to get wealthy. And so there's that, like, morally gray, right? Like, we love the Cullens. They're the best. But actually, they've committed a lot of wrongs to be where they are. But they're not killing humans.
Wrongs are
subjective.
I think that's where the gray comes in because like they're gonna live forever. It's a very different thing than the rest of us. They aren't aging.
So what's fraud?
There's certain thing. Yeah. Well, they also like kind of have to because they're not aging. So how can you explain without exposing the whole world? How can you explain that you're 17 forever? I mean, at some point you're gonna have to do something.
Right. But I think like just standard vampire powers would be cool because like Edward literally stays up and he can like speed read so many books. Think of your TBR would be like so small. Like you can get through your TBR if you had like you didn't have to sleep and you could just speed read everything. Like that is what I'm
honestly
thinking.
Could never
that would
sleep.
be okay.
Yeah,
I could do
never
that.
Sleeping would be wild. That would be weird.
Well, not having to sleep.
Are you ever at like Are you like ever at rest? I don't know. That's a strange thing too.
Well, remember Bella's perspective in Breaking Dawn Part 2. She was like, I can just stand here forever. I feel just as rested by standing here as I do sitting. And so I think that they're just like forever in a restful state. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's like their human perception of comfort doesn't exist anymore. So I'm just thinking about my TBR. I can actually read all the books I want to read.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to this. So we have the meadow scene, and I feel like you had some feelings about the meadow scene, Michelle.
So freaking long. Okay, so part of this, I actually did the audiobook for a lot of this book, and the voice actor is actually really good. He had a good dynamic with Edward and, his different inflections and different perceptions, and even he switched his voice a lot depending on who he was like reading their mind. But this scene in the audiobook is an hour and 45 minutes. That is a long chapter. There's so much in this chapter because it's his worry and like his worry about Bella, his worry about what she's going to think, him like, you know, him worrying about the monster inside of him.
This is the skin of the
And
killer.
yeah, and there's just so much. He has so much like anxiety and so
Brooding.
much
Yeah, he
brooding
does.
that just it takes so long to get through. And I thought I didn't realize there's so much going on in his mind because Bella's chapter from her like taking in all this information, and
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
it's because it's so much information for her to take in, she doesn't take in all of it. That's why her chapters are so much smaller. But this chapter, I'm like, oh my god, is it done yet? Or we're in the meadow. This should be done now, and it's it was a very long chapter to get through all of Edward's brooding and smelling of and checking
There's
all
a
of
lot of
like
smelling
her
happening.
pulse. There's a lot of sense going on, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just long. And I understand because Edward's very complex, but some of it I'm like, I get it. I get it. He thinks he's a monster and he's going to kill her, but he needs to test that boundary. I don't need to be reminded of it every couple of pages. So yeah, it was a long scene.
Yeah. That's the thing, is this book, there's so much more depth to it, and is it necessary? I think we get to a certain point where we realize that like he's
You get
checking
it?
our pulse and he's probably going to keep doing that. Like we
Mhm.
get it. Do you think it's unnecessarily long?
Yes. I think
Yeah,
some
I
parts
would
I
agree.
think are very unnecessarily long. Like I don't, because I mean the chapters are just a lot beefier than Twilight. Chapters tend to be between like 20 to 30 pages max on like the majority of the chapters, but these chapters were long, and a lot of it was repetition. And I understand it's
Yeah,
to
it's a lot of repetition. A ton. It's
emphasize
a
like
ton to like.
Edward's mind, but yeah, a lot of it could have been cut out. I think there were, and a lot of it is like, okay, this is Edward's perspective of the same scene. Like we've seen this scene before, so I don't think the repetition was necessary. It's if
Mhm.
there's new scenes, then yeah, okay, maybe it's a little bit more necessary. But a lot of these scenes are the same exact thing we've seen. So
Yeah, and I kind of found myself skimming on parts of that because I had already read it. So it was like
mhm,
there were certain parts of it that I found myself skimming, like, okay, I know what's about to happen here.
mhm,
It's
yep,
almost identical. I mean, you get extra, like some little extra scenes of different things that are in it. It has to be. It's a
yep,
retelling, and it's just his understanding or lack thereof, truly, of
mhm,
her and the relationship dynamic. And so it's interesting because I would say like this miscommunication trope is a big one in this. And it's because
at
he's
least
so
favorite.
used to, yeah, not fun. He's so used to being able to read someone's mind, and she's so unreadable that he's just like he doesn't know what to do with this.
Right,
And it's like he just forgot how to be social as a normal, like humanly social. He's having to
right.
do that with Bella because he
I
cannot
mean,
read
it's
her
been
mind,
like
and he's just like on a struggle bus.
right. It's been like over 80 years since he's had to socialize like a human, so he's probably a little bit rusty.
He's struggling. Yes,
Struggling for sure.
definitely.
I will say, okay, so when he introduces Bella to the Cullens, like most of that's the same.
Hmm.
Most of it's the exact same. We get a little bit more of like what each Cullen is thinking at the time, just because of that. That's what Edward is like perceiving. But I did like how we actually got a lot more detail of that time after he turned a vampire. Like 10 years afterwards, this is where he like went and hunted humans for a little bit. We get more perspective on that. Like he does tell the story to Bella, but you actually get more of like him re-experiencing the story in his head. Like one man that he hunted was like about to kidnap and murder like a little child, like a little girl, and he was like hunting her, and you get like the perspective of like he couldn't tell if this guy was going to actually kill her or not because the guy in his head is like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And then finally, like in his head, he's like, I can do this. And this is when Edward stepped in and like kidnapped him. And like there was relief on the guy's head, on the guy's face. Like, I wasn't going to do it. I didn't do it. But Edward's like, no, but you were going to. And so you get more
Yeah.
of that, like, him being a monster aspect, because obviously he's not telling Bella all of the little nitty gritty details. He just is kind of broad with it. And Bella accepts that as,
Right.
like, okay, that's truth. But you get more of that. So I did like that part a little bit.
I think that also plays into why it's not a YA for me.
Right. Right. He was this, I mean, it says that he was going to attack this girl. I think that this guy, because he was literally stalking and being a predator towards like a little girl. I think there was going to be some essay there. And Edward justifies his monster by attacking other monsters, you know? And that's a
Yes.
very mature concept that isn't really a YA theme when you start talking about assault in that sort of way and murder in that sort of way. So I would agree. Then we have baseball. So the baseball scene's pretty much the same, but I did like how you actually focus on the game with Edward, because Edward's actually playing in the game. So you get more of the actual playing, which I thought was interesting, because in Twilight, it's Bella watching from the sidelines and she can't even actually see what's going on because they're moving so fast. So I liked how it was more involved in the game than you would have gotten before. You get more of, you know, Rosalie's perspective, and Edward had to like beg Rosalie to come because she hates Bella essentially, because she's a human that doesn't want to be a human, and that's ultimately what she wants in her life. But I did like how you got more of the game aspect and more of like the camaraderie that they have, which is a little bit more present in the movie than is in the book, because it's harder for Bella to understand what's going on because her human eyes can't see that. And then, of course, once the baseball scene happens, that's when the Nomads occur. That's where we get James, who is the Twilight villain, but then we get Victoria, who is basically the villain for the next couple of books. And then obviously Laurent. We know that James hunts Bella, and the chase of
The tracker.
the tracker. Yeah. So the chase scene is actually in detail because Bella wasn't being chased. Bella was flying to Phoenix. So you actually get Edward and Carlisle and Emmett going through the whole chase, trying to track James down, trying to figure out where he's going, checking in with Alice if they're on the right track, because they lose him because James is staying like outside of their radar, like checking in with Alice to see if they're in the right trail, because Alice is still checking in with like the future, seeing what's going to happen. And they ultimately lose James, which, you know, we know that they lose James. James ends up going to Phoenix. He actually ends up catching like a tiny plane somewhere in Canada, and just like, it's like, okay, so he just hijacks a plane and knows how to fly a plane all of a sudden, and just kind of like just takes it. And they're like, well shit, we can't track him in the air. I'm just like, do we all have pilot license? Is that something that we just have? We just take tiny planes and it's okay?
You have to remember that James is the one who originally found Alice and didn't turn Alice, but wanted to take her, and is the factor into why Alice is a vampire.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's a pilot.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying he's old as shit is what I'm saying. He's fucking old. And so, yeah, I mean, he could have taken flight lessons at some point, I feel like.
One of his personas, just like how Edward was like, he went to Harvard.
Yeah.
And, you know, has done some other
Edward
shit.
has like 2 medical degrees. Yeah. It's like, why not? He's gone to Ivy League schools twice.
Yeah.
So they're like, you know, why not? I don't feel like that's actually that far-fetched. And all honesty, it's not. Like, I feel like it's not.
That's funny. When I was reading, I'm like, okay, so we're just gonna hop on a plane and it's fine.
Yeah.
And then obviously when Edward's perspective comes in, it's after the fact of Bella being attacked, and, you know, he's smelling all the blood, and you get a lot more of the strategy to get rid of James, his whole murder, because of, you know, him hurting Bella. You get Edward's perspective on trying to take out the venom, which is a lot for him, because he like goes back and forth on whether he's going to kill her, whether he's the one to do it, someone else needs to do it, but he was the only one there because Carlisle's trying to stop the bleeding elsewhere on Bella's body, when, James literally like tore her apart.
Yep.
And Alice's
Yeah,
vision,
it's a
like
lot.
Alice is the one that tells Edward, okay, you can stop now. He's the one that because he was about to go crazy. He was about to like drain her. And Alice is the one
Mhm.
that breaks through his thoughts and is like, you're okay. She's fine. Everything's fine. You're okay. And then like he like drops her hand. So I like that you got that perspective. And then Alice constructs this crazy plan to send like suitcases on different planes and to send Emmett away, and how they like she books multiple rooms at the hotel by wearing different clothing, and then like falls down and like breaks through glass at the hotel. And it was just a crazy chapter of Alice just having all of these little details like tied together to make sure no one
Yeah.
suspected them, to make sure that Bella's story checks out, and to like cover up whatever track. So I thought that was pretty cool because you don't get that from Bella because she wasn't there.
No. And it's like involved.
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it is
A
very,
lot to
very
this.
detailed. She like immediately buys a ticket for Emmett, and then she just like, it's like, okay, well, you're gonna take these 2 suitcases, and I'm gonna send this suitcase somewhere else, and the car is gonna get sent somewhere, and we're gonna pick up a different car and take it to the hospital. And then it was very, very detailed. And obviously, we get this from Edward's perspective, picking apart Alice's brain as she's coming up with all these things. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how you're getting this perspective. And then Edward finds out what actually happens in the ballet studio, because after they get Bella to the hospital, they have a tape. James had a tape of the whole thing. So he's like watching or the recording of Bella being,
Right.
tortured and hurt and everything. The last thing that I actually enjoyed from this is we actually get Edward's perspective on her mother, and like because Edward's like reading her mother's mind and is realizing
Renee.
like
Mm-hmm.
Renee, and how self-absorbed she is, which we already knew that, but Edward actually seeing it and then fully understanding why Bella does the things she does, because he gets into her mind and realizes how Bella has had to validate her existence her entire life by making sure she checks in with her and she like takes care of her. And it's not just like you assume it's because Bella has to do it because who else is going to do it? Yes, that's part of it, but other part of it is Bella felt inadequate in her mother's life unless she was picking up some sort of piece, which Edward pieces together from Renee's mind. So I thought that kind of
Yeah. And what are
pulled
your
together
thoughts
more.
on that?
I mean, we've talked about how Renee is not my favorite. I don't think Renee is redeemable.
No.
She is very much self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
As a mother, I wouldn't just up and leave my daughter and like be
Right.
like, okay, well, I'm gonna marry this guy and he's gonna take more of my life and matter more in my life than you.
Than my
Uh,
kid. Yeah.
yeah, that I literally grew inside of me and watched like grow. That just doesn't, I don't understand that. But there are
Yeah.
plenty of people out there who do understand that, because they have more of that mentality that this is my life, even though just because I'm a mom doesn't mean like my entire life is my kids. And I don't understand that, but there are plenty of moms out there who are like that, and I don't necessarily agree with that sort of parenting. So Renee's always rubbed me the wrong way.
I
And it's
I think Renee too, though, you don't have Bella, and you don't have Bella falling in love with Edward or any of these other things happening without Renee. And I
Mhm.
think that allows, same with Charlie, is she has absentee parents. And I think that's where you romanticize this in your teen years. And then you go back and read this series as an adult, especially as a parent, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And where's her parents?
She just needed
You know,
present
like,
parents who loved her. She needed to be told she was
honestly.
loved all the time. And she didn't get that. And that's how we get
And she didn't need to do anything to
teenagers
get
like that.
love. And I
Mm.
feel like that's the difference. Is she feels like she has to take care of Charlie and make sure he eats. She feels like she has to, like, these just extra things that like a teenage girl, I'm not saying like chores and all that are not important. That's absolutely not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
What I am saying is like you shouldn't have to continue to validate that you need to
Existence
earn
is
love
valued.
from your parents.
Yeah.
Right. Like that you need to earn it. That's where it chronic like, and even she talks about that with her and Edward and saying chronically kind of feeling like I'm nothing. Like you're everything. Like why do you even look at me? Like I'm nothing. And that comes from her parents. And
I
it's
know.
like it works for the story. It really does, but it again adds another darker element for me that I wonder, does a teenage brain reading this story really able to fully comprehend kind of the depth of that? But to be fair, I mean, a lot of high schoolers are reading really dark literature in books, and there's a lot of information there that's just going right over their head. So maybe they'll pick it all up on a reread later. But yes, I feel like there's definitely some pieces of Twilight Saga as a whole that are definitely a little bit problematic in terms of the female main character having true freedom and not having those really, really heavy, naive elements to her decision making and just being so influenced by her upbringing and that need for validation.
Right. I mean, but think about how the average teenager likely feels Bella. Like very
Oh,
much
absolutely.
so.
Well, yeah.
And that's very
1000%.
unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. So like reading this as an adult, I'm like, this is so problematic. She, as a parent's perspective, I'm like, she needs this, this, and this. As, if I was to read this as a teenager who grew up in like a divorced household, who had an absentee mother, I would be like, well, shit, I totally understand Bella. Like this is how I feel right now.
That was me.
And exactly.
That's exactly what I had. I had a divorced, I identified with Bella because I had a divorced household. I went and lived with a single father. I had a single father who didn't, not to his fault, but just didn't understand me as a teenage girl and lived with an absentee mom. So like I really understand Bella, but that's also part of the problem is I really understand her too well to know that these are things that
could
I
have
wish
been avoided.
Wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Yes.
And they could have been avoided if the parents were more present. And I 100% agree with all of that. So that leads us to some of the thematics here. We've talked about how this story is very much darker than the entire saga, even though it's reliving the first book. And we have, of course, the moral struggle and self-control that we have Edward facing the entire book, of whether he has the control to keep Bella alive, to not feed on her, to try to do things so he doesn't feel so like lusted for her. Like he would overindulge himself on animals and, hunt more often than usual. And it's just really his battle of his nature versus like his values. And he's very old school in his values. Like, he was raised in the early 19th century. He was, very much a gentleman of sorts, but like monster and gentleman don't really go hand in hand. And he has to constantly struggle with that. And that's not something he's had to do for a long time. Like he doesn't struggle in
ever
being around the humans.
Not ever. Not to the level that he had to with Bella ever. Midnight Sun only further validated the fact that Edward and Bella are fated mates. To me, there is just too much evidence pointing in that direction, even though we didn't technically have that trope at that time. There's no one else for either of them. He had never, in all of his existence, ever at this whole time met someone like her that he couldn't read. Not just like blood drawn, but like because you had Emmett who talked about, oh yeah, I was really drawn to like there was two situations. And that's another thing is you get more of these like little side stories and things like that further develop their characters. But him and Jasper both kind of tell them mind to mind, oh yeah, I had this like experience that was similar. And Edward lives the memory with them through their mind. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not this. That's just it. You're not even 10% of what I'm explaining about her. And that's why Arrow, when he goes to touch Edward in New Moon, is like, oh, she, how much you're obsessed with her, like makes me thirsty. because he sees the intensity of what Edward is actually feeling in being able to like touch the hand, right? And the Volturi can see that, and it just further emphasized the fated mates. They're fated mates. There's no two ways about it. They're just there was no one else for them. Are there issues with how I think the age thing could have been written differently? Sure. Does it change it ultimately? Not really.
Right.
I think that the thing that bothers me more is not really related to age so much as the way that Bella talks to herself, her self-talk, and her maturity, even though there's all this justification of like she's so much more mature because she had to take care of her parents and she had it doesn't still really matter that much, because still from a biological perspective she has not had the time to grow and have her full frontal lobe develop and all the things that you need to be a full-fledged adult, and even have some. She never lived by herself. Like she never got to go off and do anything on her own, and now all those choices are taken from her. Am I Rosalie in this instance? A little bit, because I feel like it's not fair. It's not fair to her, and it makes me struggle with it. Even though I know they're fated mates, it's not the same as life or death decision. It becomes that because of the wedding and because she gets pregnant and all of this, but it's not the same as like some of the other stories we've seen where the world that they're in doesn't apply. She's in our world. She's in the real world. It's a different way of reading a female main character and kind of how naive she is throughout. And the way that the guys talk to her in Eclipse and even Jacob, both of them, I struggle with a lot of it in the obsessiveness of Edward and the stalker thing. And I just, it's that's probably my biggest thing that I just can't get past. As much as I love the nostalgia of Twilight, as much as I actually liked this book. I didn't hate it. I as soon as I shifted my mindset of like this is more of a adult themed book, it made me feel better immediately. So I feel like wish it had been categorized as that. But I think the dedication does help.
Right. But I mean, in this book, Bella is still 17, so she's still a minor in that sense.
Yep.
When he is literally sitting in her bedroom watching her sleep and listening to her
and he
talk.
says that, though. He even identifies this. Like, he knows this. There's no, like, gray area of him saying he doesn't know. Like, no, he's like, I know, and I know that this is wrong because she knows I'm not here.
Yep.
But then he keeps on saying, well, she's so problematic. Like, she's so drawn to chaos that
so I have to be here, or someone else is going to be here. Yeah. That's the justification that we see in all these stalker romances and dark romance and all that stuff. And we do see in this book a lot more of love as a sacrifice, because we see Edward sacrificing a lot of his vampire nature so he can be with Bella. And a lot of it's painful for him because literally he gets like this burning sensation in the back of his throat, which is like the thirst. And
he's like in pain all the time.
Yeah. And there's a balance with it because from his perspective, from Bella's perspective, she's like, you're in pain all the time. I'm sorry for that. But when you get from his perspective, there are some key moments that he sees her genuinely happy and sees her like experiencing joy, and it dulls the pain. So you get more of the justification of like, okay, the pain is worth it, but still he's sacrificing a lot just to be with her. And then there's more, there's the free will versus predestination, which, is a big controversy in general. It's a big debate. But here, because Alice's visions, based on Edward's course of actions, which Alice's visions play not that they didn't play a big role before, but you see how big of the role they play for Edward, because Alice doesn't tell everyone her visions. Edward just reads them off her mind as they're happening to her. So Alice's visions say, based on Edward's course of thinking, whatever he thinks right now, Edward's going to do this. Okay, well, if Edward knows that that's going to happen, he can change his mindset and then something else is going to happen. So we see a lot of that. He can change his future based on what he chooses to do, which is kind of freeing for Edward in a sense, because he sees himself as like this big
absolutely.
monster. But it's like, again,
He kind
we
of
get
gets
this
2 superpowers out of it.
right.
Yeah.
But we get this freedom for Edward in not being a monster, but we don't see as much freedom for Bella, who's supposed to be our FMC, right? But our MMC does get to enjoy this type of freedom, even though he can't fully indulge in, like, you know, his thirst or whatever. He still gets the justification, like, okay, I might think I'm a monster, but I get the actual vision from Alice that says, based on what I'm doing right now, I am not a monster. So that validates him as a person and gives him his freedom of choice, essentially.
What did you think about, like, the love story aspect from Edward's perspective?
Like, I mean, it was
his love for her.
It was so obsessive. And I knew it was obsessive before. Like, I remember reading Twilight, like, he literally stalks her. Like, that he's in her like, that's not okay. Or he's, like, around her. Like, he tells her he's in her room. And now you see that.
But I mean,
and
you have high school sweethearts that
they're so obsessive. They're so that how often does that actually happen, though? High school sweethearts that make it. Like, college people. I mean, me and my husband met in college.
To be pretty low.
But, like, even people who meet in college when, you know, your frontal lobe is actually developed, they don't even make it out. So it's very, very low. And she's kind of willfully stuck in a high school romance. Which, if I was with my high school sweetheart, I would have. There's a reason we are not. That is not a thing. But because, you know, we grow and we mature and we understand how people should be treated. So she just has this great love for him, who he sees her as like this obsession. And then she ultimately sees him as an obsession. And it's honestly not healthy. If my 17-year-old was this obsessed with a guy, within within a couple of months, she's obsessed with him. I would be like, honey, we need to put on the brakes. This is not an okay thing to have. It's good.
And Charlie tries.
He does.
Charlie does try.
But she's so independent at that point because she's had to be. Like, you can't try at 17.
That's what happens in Eclipse, you know?
Right.
He's like, you know, and
I want you to see like other friends and stuff.
Yeah, it's too late. Like, too little, too late, Charlie.
Right.
You know, like, there's just like you can't do anything about it now. It's over.
This is why you need strong parents in your life from like birth until like all throughout your teenage years, because when shit happens, this is like a big issue I have with YA in general. The kids depicted in YA, or like any sort of like teen movie, teen show, the adults aren't trustworthy in like any of them. And when teens consume these,
well, you have to give the teens the freedom,
right?
Because how else are you going to do that? Yeah.
But it's also showing teenagers who consume this that adults can't be trustworthy, and you can solve your problems on your own. And the majority of teens should not be solving their problems on their own, because they don't have the life experience to actually solve those problems. And that's where a lot of teens get into trouble. So that's like a big issue I have with YA in general, that it's showing adults are not trustworthy, which in some cases adults aren't. But that doesn't mean there aren't trustworthy adults somewhere that you should be able to depend on. You know, and it just makes me sad.
Yeah.
That part just makes me
Usually
sad.
There's like a token one,
right?
You know, like sensei type person in
right.
The
and here
YA,
it's Carlisle, but Carlisle's a vampire.
Yeah.
Bella needed someone for Bella. And really, Bella doesn't ever get someone for Bella in any sort of aspect, because even though she joins the family, they were going to support Edward no matter what he does. Bella and Jacob was going...
Like, if they would have killed her, they would have figured out how to protect Edward. That's how exactly it starts in the beginning.
So Bella never has an adult, never really has someone that is just there for Bella. And that's really sad. Yeah. Because she also, like, you know, deserves that.
It's rough.
Everyone deserves that.
Edward believes that's him.
But you should have someone outside of a romantic relationship, too.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And Alice believes it's her. Everything. But it can't be It can't be any of the vampires.
But Alice will
They're not
always choose
human.
Jasper even over the entire family. But
Yeah.
she needed someone in her own camp. And Angela was kind of that, but Angela also had her own boyfriend, and they never really had that close of a bond.
But Angela shouldn't have been that. This is where we go back to Renee.
Yes, it should have been her mom, her
mother.
dad. Yeah.
It's disappointing. But
yes.
And again, without Renee and Charlie, we don't have Twilight. So we have to have some way that this makes sense where this story can actually occur. So again, while I wish that it could have gone differently, I understand the reason to write it this way.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's transition a little bit. Key differences between Twilight and Midnight Sun. Twilight is a lot more, because it's Bella's perspective. We talked about this a little bit. It only really gives you what Bella needs to see to make the story move forward. This story is shorter, significantly shorter. It's the first release of the series, also first movie, also meaning it likely got edited down, maybe quite a bit. We'll never probably know that, but it's the first of the series, so usually this is true. Usually the first book of any series is probably one of the smaller ones. That's not always true, but oftentimes that tends to be the case, because you don't know if it's going to get picked up for the series. You don't know what's going to happen with it from a publishing standpoint. And in this book in particular, every type of fear is seen through Bella's eyes. We only get to see the monster world between Jacob and Edward and all that from Bella's perspective. So you don't get all these extra things, the nuance that you get in Midnight Sun. Midnight Sun, on the other hand, is written as one of the last books. It was actually started to be written in 2008, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the 2020 release of Midnight Sun is dedicated to the fans. These are fans that want a long book. They wanted a long book. We as fans at this point have been fans, right, for a long, long time. So at this point, it makes sense to release this Midnight Sun, Edward's perspective, as a long-ass fucking book, because your fandom wants to read it. You know it's going to get published. You know that you're going to have millions and millions of readers, and people are just going to eat this shit up. They're going to love reading it from his perspective. It also needed to be this long in certain aspects, but I agree with you. A lot of this could have been cut. We kind of really talked about this, but because of Edward being so introspective of himself and all the things he's battling, I could have just done without a lot of his thoughts, to be honest with you. And I don't think it would have ever worked to have this book first, because that would have been my next question for you. Do you think Midnight Sun versus Twilight would have ever had the same impact? And I don't think that's... No. I think the answer is no.
No, if Midnight Sun was to be released first, this would have had to be an adult fiction. Like, this wouldn't need to be an adult, because it's too dark for teenagers who pick this up as a YA. YA's 10, 11, 12 years old. Like, that's way too dark for that age. And yeah, it would have to always be Bella's perspective first. And like you said, there's a lot of it. I was like, I could do without this, because a lot of it, it's not adding a lot more to the plot. The plot's still the same. Edward and Bella fall in love, and then he battles with the turning of her, which it's still the same. It doesn't change the story at all. So you're just getting a lot more of his thoughts, and his thoughts are very much repetitive. And we get other people's thoughts as well, which is interesting, but his thoughts, very, very repetitive. And the monster. Do I give in to the monster? Like, I haven't heard a man refer to himself in the third person in a very long time.
I do think, though, he loves her, and ultimately them being fated mates makes me okay with what went on, because I felt like it was kind of inevitable, especially with Alice's visions and everything that happened. Like I said at the very beginning of our coverage, Bella would have died when she got hit by the truck from Tyler. The van would have crushed her. She would have died. There would be no story. There would be no Jacob. Like, she'd have died right at the very beginning of this book, because Edward saves her. And there was no one else for either of them. And the story works for that reason. There are things that are problematic, but I think most stories we're always going to find places
Something.
that could have been better. Yeah, you're always going to find something. But there is controversy that I wanted to note around the release of Midnight Sun. Midnight Sun was in a partial draft version in 2008, and it leaked 12 chapters, the first 12 chapters, which is a hefty chunk of this book, leaked in 2008. And at the time, Stephanie Meyer was so upset about this occurring, this leak. She just was like, I'm just never going to release it. She's like, I can't do this. I can't believe that this happened. And you know what it reminded me of? It kind of reminds me of what just happened recently with Rebecca Yarros with Onyx Storm being put out into the public. I know that was only a couple days and it was just right before the release.
It was like
but
a week. Yeah.
Yeah, but imagine Onyx Storm, the first half of it, just being like released.
That would be heartbreaking
And,
because this is like this person's livelihood. That's their life's work. They're pouring their heart and soul into this book. And to have someone just completely disregard that is heartbreaking to hear. I'm curious to know how it even got leaked in 2008, if someone just hacked her computer or if, she shared it with a friend, to proofread and that happened. I don't know how that happened, but I would understand. I don't blame her for not finishing it for a long time.
She wrote a comment on her website at the time, and she said, I did not want my readers to experience Midnight Sun before it was completed, edited, and published. I think it is important for everybody to understand that what happened was a huge violation of my rights as an author, not to mention me as a human being. And I feel like that sums it up pretty perfectly. Stephanie Meyer just was heartbroken. There's no other way to say it. To have her work just stolen like that. And I can't imagine, these are hundreds of pages that got leaked, and it's an awful,
it's like a good
thing.
third of the book. Like that's a lot of the book to put into play. And that this is like the culmination of her saga, right? This is like the ending of her story. And to have her story end in such a violating sort of way is just awful.
And it kind of reminds you of the level of fandom at the time. This is 2008, so this is before all the movies have released. Breaking Dawn hadn't come out yet at this point. This is before all that happened. Then she holds off and releases Midnight Sun in 2020. So long time. She waits a long, long time before she ends up releasing this book. And she released it in a very kind of interesting time. I'm sure that had nothing to do with like timing on purpose. I think this was probably pre-planned before COVID ever occurred. But 2020 was a interesting year.
It was a hell of a time.
Was in time. Yeah. Let's transition to pop culture during the era when Midnight Sun ends up being released, which finally gets pushed to 2020. It came out during a pretty much turbulent time in the world in general. A lot of movie theaters are shut down at this time, as we remember what went on. Some of the other really popular streaming things, of course, with the COVID pandemic. Hamilton gets released in 2020. Umbrella Academy. Live action Mulan.
Okay, so remember the summer of 2020 when everyone was just obsessed with Tiger King? Like that was just that show.
Yes.
Wild. It's like, okay, there's chaos going outside in the world, but all of us were just watching this man just in his cult and with tigers.
Oh my God.
And like this whole thing. I just remember
there's definitely a time.
Yeah. There's an obsession with that. It was I don't even know. I can't even describe how that was. But yeah, and then Hamilton, that was constantly on.
That was big.
Everyone was playing.
Oh yeah, it was everywhere.
It was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal Broadway performance. But the Tiger King and Hamilton, that was two completely polar opposite type of like television that were just really popular at that time.
And nobody even knew what to do. You were just like, what do I do now? You couldn't go out anywhere. It was just, God, what a wild time that whole situation.
Yes, and the toilet paper was gone.
Was just freaking wild. Yeah,
remember
the toilet paper was gone. Yes, I remember.
The mass hoarding of all of the things. It was wild. And I was pregnant with my first kid during that time. It was just a weird it it was an awful time for the world in general, but with being in isolation, and there was just some weird cultural elements that came out of it because it put people in this nation. Like, we as people have it, even though like Americans tend to be a little bit more like self-isolating in a way. We're not as much of a culture that is communal in a sense, but really being isolated to your house, and some people even to just like their own room for days, weeks, months at a time,
Yeah.
is
Mm-hmm.
just this isolation had such an impact on not just pop culture, but how communication, technology,
Yeah.
just how people function in a social environment. I feel like it both moved technology and kind of in some aspects reduced people to want simpler things. I feel like from this you get the birth of
Oh
like
yeah.
people wanting
Hobbies
to like hobbies.
exploded.
Podcasts exploded. So many podcasts were born out of
Social media.
2020. Yeah, social
So
media.
many social media stars literally
Mhm.
started in 2020
Because they were
that are
home.
hugely famous now. Yeah.
They're home. What am I going to do? This is how I can socialize. I made a lot of bread. I
Yeah.
remember the yeast being gone from the stores because people were like, let's just make bread. And now, like, people make sourdough and like
Sourdough.
that's a big thing. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot of cultural elements spawned that are present today spawned out of this time.
Even the queen herself, Miss Taylor Swift, released Folklore in 2020, and it had this indie new folk kind of sound to it. You had Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion with WAP. You had BTS with Dynamite, all English single. Billie Eilish, Doja Cat. We had all these things going on playlists and TikTok, and you really
TikTok,
see
yeah.
TikTok and explode during this
Hmm.
time. It was just all these different trends, social media's trends, and ways to understand each other during lockdown and have different social engagement that we missed because of the time that we were in this state and in shutdown. It was very interesting. You had still a big love for Twilight. There was a lot of Twilight renaissance. TikTok and Twitter saw this resurgence of Twilight content, which we actually still really see today.
Hmm.
This hasn't gone away. There are still, we've talked about this throughout our coverage, but there are still a bunch of strictly Twilight that do amazing, strictly Twilight content. That's all they put out. Nothing
Hmm.
else. Only Twilight coverage, and they talk about theories, things that they've read, and it's interesting to me how much of a base that still has. There's a lot of folks that are really still, they call them twihards. There's still a lot of twihard fans out there that really really loved this whole thing. And
Right.
Forks, Washington, celebrating the 20th anniversary of the book release, is having a big event in Forks, Washington. I know some of our listeners are actually attending that, which honestly, I'd love to go to that. I think that would be super fun.
That'd be
I'd
fun.
love to see
Yeah.
the house where it was filmed. I would love to go to La Push Beach. I would love to it's a real place, and there's not
Yeah.
many book series out there, especially fantasy series, where you actually can go. It's a
Mhm.
real place. So you can actually go to this real place, this real little town, and put Forks on the map, and it's become a destination for them in such a positive way, where the Twilight fans have just kind of flocked there and have something really cool to go enjoy and experience. So I don't know. I love that. I think that even the Twilight listeners, yeah, we've definitely taken some, I wouldn't say like negativity per se, but I would just say our perspectives have changed over time.
Mhm.
And I think that's healthy. I'm not a teenage girl anymore. I'm
Right.
in my mid to late 30s, and I'm a parent. And so like how I digest media now has to change from when I first read this series and first consumed the movies. And I will say though, like, I don't know that I'll be down to do a big reread anytime soon, but I do think the movies for me have always been comforting. I don't mind putting them on in the background while I'm cleaning. I enjoy the nostalgia of the Twilight series. I don't think that'll ever not be a thing. I think it's just nostalgic. It has such a good, like, warm and fuzzy for people overall. And it's because you grow up with it, and you grow up with something like that. It's like the Vampire Diaries, that also has this massive fandom of
Mhm.
people that love that. And you don't have the Vampire Diaries without Twilight. You don't have Romantasy the way it is now without Twilight. It's just one of those really, really, truly iconic series that I really hope the fandom never truly goes away, because it's they can laugh at themselves. That's the best part. This fandom loves to laugh at themselves. They
Right.
understand that it's cheesy. It's a good time. So I'm here for that.
Agreed. Other things going on in the book world at this time, ACOTAR is gaining a lot of traction, especially with TikTok, book talk. Since TikTok is, exploding, book talk also is birthed from this. And then the release of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is a prequel
Big
for
one.
The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And that was in May of 2020. And when this
Snow
book came
Story.
out, when this book came out, like, I binged this book completely. Well, we were home, right? We had to be home. And I binged this story, and this is like a nostalgia read for me. I know Twilight was a nostalgia read for you, not so much for myself. But this was like going back to, okay, I'm back in high school.
Oh,
and I can read these books.
I love Ballad
And
of Songbirds and Snakes. Same here. I read it the first week it came out.
Yep. So good. And
First week it came out.
And I think that really, with Twilight, the resurgence, it really solidified how nostalgic millennials are, and we will eat shit up from our childhood, like, completely. And Suzanne Collins was, I mean, this release was really popular. It instantly got a movie, and then she just released the other prequel series this year. It was immediately signed on for a movie. So it just shows that millennials will consume anything that gives us a feeling of the early 2000s, a time that was simpler, where we just we knew what was going on around us, and we had control over certain aspects of our lives, and just it will be popular.
We have Kayla Rulin, who was on our show with her Twilight cookbook, and just all the merch, the fandom, the Twilight Lego house that they have, just like, there's so much stuff that came out of this, and so many really cool things that people just ran with it and loved. You have the book series coming out, re-releasing with the special editions that look amazing. They're releasing September 30th. You have the Forks event that's coming up this year where Kayla is going to be there, but you have these amazing books. I mean, you have us on a podcast talking about it still 20 years later. We're having events that are going to be amazing here at the end of this week. We have our Twilight event actually premiering. The day that this premieres, we have our Twilight event followed by a New Moon event. And it's the fandom's great for Twilight. It's the nostalgia's there, and it's beloved. And so it's been, I think it's been really fun to talk about it. It's been fun to go down memory lane talking about Twilight, and checking it all out, being part of this fandom and experiencing Twilight, watching the movies again together. I enjoyed that, watching them with you and laughing and going through the story again. And it was it's been really cool to see where the actors have gone now, and it's just been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I'm glad we did it. And I think that it was something totally different for the show, something we've never really done before. And I really enjoyed the nostalgia and all the vibes that Twilight brings. And I mean, we did your really fun pregnancy announcement, just redoing that clip. It's just fun. It's fun. The fandom's fun. I've had so much fun covering these books, and yeah, I like the fact that I know the fandom knows that someone's always going to say there's something problematic, and they still don't give a shit. They're like, yeah, we know that. That's fine. We're all adults here. Like, everybody's moved on from that point, And that's kind of just made it more enjoyable.
Yeah. All right. Well, now it's time for our mystery Q&A. These questions have not been shared with either of us prior to asking.
You going first?
So my question to you is, millennials loved collecting. So collecting stuff. What was something that you collected when you were kid, teenager, young adult?
Oh, Beanie Babies.
Okay,
Hands down. Hands down. Oh my God. My grandma and aunt and I used to go to like different stores, like little boutique stores, I guess would be now, small bookstores, all these different little stores that like would sell them. And Yeah, TY Beanie Babies, Ty Beanie Babies, phenomenal. It was
Yeah.
just a phenomenon. They were everywhere, and you needed to collect them because apparently they were gonna like be worth something huge one day.
Which they
And
never
honestly, it was
did.
just
They never
look, some
were.
of them are okay. I still have them. I like still have them in glass cases and stuff. Like, you know,
Really?
yeah, I still have them. I
Okay.
still have my. I also
I mean, I
collected
still have mine
Pokemon
too, but
cards,
okay, same. Okay.
and they were mint, but I don't have them anymore because I
Oh,
sold them, and I am
wrong time.
distraught over that. And I also collected Pogs. I don't know if
Okay.
you remember Pogs. That might
Yeah,
predate you.
I
Pogs were like a really
remember
big thing
them.
too. My
Yeah.
elder millennials will know Pogs. So if you know, you know.
That's wild. I also
What about
collected
you?
Beanie Babies. I
There you
remember
go.
because, they were going to be worth something someday. So, like, if you had like the little
Uh-huh.
holo tag, you would put like the little tag clippy thing on it to preserve the tag because the Beanie Baby wasn't worth anything if the tag wasn't attached. I still have them, a good bit of them, I think. Now my daughter plays with them. And then I also collected Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I don't know where any of my stuff is. Oh, my
Mm.
brother sold a lot of the stuff. I don't know if we combined our stuff. I know he's now like, this card's worth a couple $1,000, and we had a holographic Charizard.
Whoa.
He's like, sold it at the wrong time because now it's worth $8,000, and
How?
it's just, yeah, the holographic Charizard, the old school one, crazy
Yeah.
expensive. Yeah, so he's like, right
I
now
had
he's
a
like really
whole
going.
book of them.
Yeah, he's like going through, he's like, I can sell all this stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. But it's like,
That's
again, bringing
nice.
back that nostalgia of like, you go to like Barnes and Noble or Books a Million, and there were Pokemon events, and you could trade cards
Oh
or you can
yeah.
battle and all that stuff.
Card trading was a
So,
huge thing. Magic the Gathering events were
mhm,
like a huge fucking deal. They had those all the time. All the events that they used to have at the bookstores that have kind of like unfortunately phased
died
out,
off.
seemingly.
Yeah.
I know they still have a few of them here and there, but that was definitely something that was really big at that
It
time
was
too.
big. Are
Different events.
packed. Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, those weren't as popular, but they were still like kind of, collectible things. But yeah, the main two were definitely Pokemon and Beanie Babies for sure.
So millennial nostalgia related, there were our cartoons, okay? And some of our cartoons were like off the rails. They were fucking unhinged. And
Mhm.
like we didn't really know that at the time, but like our parents knew that. And I don't know. There was one in particular that I freaking loved, and now watching it back, I'm like, yeah, that was insane that that was even like on TV. Do you have one that you can think of that you like loved that was a cartoon where you're like, yeah, that was nuts and I loved it?
Basically, most things on Cartoon Network, Courage the Cowardly
That's fair.
Dog, that show was horrific. Like watching them, like, oh my God. The Misadventures of Billy and Mandy. I think it's Misadventures of Billy and Mandy. It's like a boy and a girl and they're besties with a Grim Reaper. And he's just like killing people. I'm like, okay, this is valid children's show. Invader Zim. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of
There was
cartoons like just,
Archer. Remember Archer? That was not for
yes.
kids. Archer
No,
was
that
not
was
for
not that.
kids.
That was, what was Cartoon Network's nighttime? They had
Yeah,
like a
yeah. Mm-hmm.
nighttime one where they would play like some of the old animes and like,
Yeah, yeah.
Family Guy and like, all the more mature cartoons
Mm-hmm.
that still
I
we
thought
would
of
watch.
Rocco's Modern Life. Do you
Oh my
remember Rocco's Modern
God.
Life? So I thought that Rocco worked at a local comics, but I guess there's some internet speculation that maybe he did not. I don't know. I loved Rocco's Modern Life, and it got canceled after only 4 seasons, and it was because of incessant insertion of adult humor,
Oh yeah.
which
I
is speculated.
wonder.
They
Oh, which is
speculated that
speculated.
that's why the reason was. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that pretty much sums up millennial cartoons for us as a kid in the 90s. That was what was happening on. It was unhinged cartooning
Very
happening
much.
back in the day.
I
Oh my
remember
gosh. Yeah.
my dad, like I'd watch some of these shows, my dad come in and be like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, it's on the
Yeah.
kids channel. It's on the kids channel. It was on channel 36, 34, 35,
Oh yeah.
36. Those are my channels. The and
Yes.
Disney Cartoon Network." And
Uh-huh.
if you were a millennial, you would know that. Like what channel.
Yeah.
And feel free to comment down below what channel your kids' channel was on.
You knew your channels because it wasn't like you had the internet. You had channels on your TV. You had to like go to them. And I remember vividly, I remember there was a morning wake up every morning with music videos that I would put on as I was getting ready for school.
Channel 72.
MTV had
and VH1.
Yeah. 71. VH1 was at 71. And they were right next to each other. And MTV used to have the morning wake up of like, it wasn't called that. It was called something more clever than that. But I called it like the morning wake up. And it was literally like a couple hours. There was like 3 hours of just a block of music videos because all the kids were getting ready for school. And so you'd put that on in the background and it would be like whatever was on. Some of them would be like on TRL and some of them wouldn't. Total Request Live, for those who don't know what TRL is. TRL came on at 3:30 every single day with Carson Daly. And it was a big fucking deal to watch TRL. Everybody watched it. When there was going to be a drop of a newly released music video, this was a huge deal. Everybody watched this. This was known. I remember watching like Sum 41. I remember watching all these different. I remember actually Backstreet Boys when their music videos dropped, and like Avril Lavigne. I mean, everybody. And it was a really big deal. But anyway, that was really not a question. Kind of segued there. This is what happens when you start talking getting millennials. Millennials start talking about nostalgia. What a shocker. Right. Yeah, I think we're good here. We've covered our questions now.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about what's coming up next on Book Club After Dark.
I did want to take a moment to talk a little bit about our thriller, which you're covering next. So next week, because we're wrapping up our Twilight coverage, we are covering this book, which I'm showing on screen, which is Riley Sager's The Only One Left. This came out in 2023, but has a tremendous Goodreads review base, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of reviews for this book. It is something we're really excited about. It's a Gothic-based whodunit. Originally starts out in 1929 with One Bloody Night, and we are then transported to 1983, and that's where our story begins. So we're really excited to cover our thriller in between before we get started with what's next for August, which we haven't dropped just yet. There will be some hints online what we're going to be covering after our thriller very, very, very soon. And that will come out with our August calendar. Other news we have is we have our 2 events this week as well. And for a wrap up of Twilight. And then we also we were in the newspaper, guys. We were in our community paper right here, locally here in Orlando. We were on page 8. We had a little segment in there, which was very exciting. So kind of turning to the newspaper now, but we just had like a very short little blurb here. And it was really exciting for us because we didn't even know this was happening. It was mentioned to us like several months before, like, hey, we're interested, And so we're like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. And like never heard about it again. So we didn't know what had happened with it. And my husband got a text from a friend of ours and was like, oh, say congratulations to Danny. I just saw her in the newspaper. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We had no idea. So then I texted Michelle. It was just this really exciting thing. So thank you to the community paper, local a good news source that we have here in representing downtown Orlando neighborhoods for featuring Book Club After Dark. We loved that. That was a really exciting
thank you so much.
Thing to have. We liked it. Let's see. What else do you got for us, Michelle?
We have Melinda Lee's Track Her Down, which is a killer deception. A teenager returns home from work and finds her parents shot dead in their bed. And it goes through, that's pretty traumatic. As Bree and Matt shift through the past, suspect by suspect, a tangled web of deception emerges and the truth becomes harder to see. So this seems like a really interesting thriller. We also have Not Our Daughter by Chad Zunker. And this is a split-second decision, run for your life. 13 years ago, Cole and Lisa Shipley were fostering an infant with hopes of adopting her, but overnight everything was turned upside down when the child's mother bled to death on their front doorstep. So that's pretty traumatic. And then we have The First Girl by Claire McGowan. And this one is... She believed her serial killer ex was innocent, but now history is repeating itself. What does she really remember? So this one's about serial killers. And Yeah, so they all three
Okay.
seem interesting.
Thrillers.
Very excited to read those
Very
thrillers.
nice. We love receiving mail, so thank you for sending that over to us. If you're looking for our address, it's on our website. You can send that to us over there, and we'll go check that out. Unfortunately, no promises if we'll do a deep dive of it or fully cover it, but it will get read at some point, and we'll decide what to do with it. So we're very excited to receive any mail that we get, and we always appreciate that. There is one that I want to talk about in particular that we received that was super sweet, which is Rod the Zombie that we received from author Catherine Breen. And the front of it says, blends horror and humor in a story about love, identity, and what it truly means to be alive. Back end is hilarious and endearing. I'm rooting for this dead guy hard. So this is a zombie book, and we're in a paranormal romance genre here. Rod wasn't like the other guys. In fact, he wasn't really a guy, not anymore, because Rod was dead. Except that Rod wasn't like other zombies. He wasn't a mindless, moaning, and blissfully unaware zombie. No, Rod was cursed with consciousness and fully aware of how alone he truly was.
Aww.
Humans scream and run, zombies groan and shuffle, and Rod, he's stuck somewhere in between, doomed to wander alone until he meets Bethany. So there's a little bit more to this, but I wanted
it's
to
giving
leave some suspense
Frankenstein's
there.
monster there, having the consciousness of being a monster, but not being fully a monster. That sounds interesting.
Super cute. We also got, with that, she sent us some really cute stickers. So we got a paranormal romance sticker. But Daddy, I love him sticker with a zombie hand and a couple other cute ones in there. And she wrote us a nice little card. She said, Danny and Michelle, thanks so much for taking the time to read my new book. I hope you love the story as much as I do. XO, Catherine. And I think that's super sweet. So Catherine will definitely be reading Rod the Zombie, and we thank you so much for sending it our way. So again, if you have any suggestions for us, if you have things you want to send us in the mail, we have a couple of other items that I'm going to share on socials that we received in the mail too. That we always appreciate it, and yeah, drop us a line on our website. So that covers it.
And don't forget, we want to hear from you. If you have thoughts on Midnight Sun or suggestions for future reads, drop a comment below or message us on one of our social media platforms at Book Club After Dark Pod. Show us your fan art, theories, or anything bookish you'd like to share.
You can also visit our website, as I said, bookclubafterdark.co, and you can stay up to date on our cozy content. You can check out some of our merch. You can drop us a line on our website as well, and we always look forward to hearing from you.
That's all for tonight. Sleep tight, night owls. Until next time, happy reading.